John Bush here with the SovereignBTC podcast, your guide to the practical side of everyday Bitcoin use. The past couple weeks, we've been covering the Ross Ulbricht trial, the Silk Road trial. Ross Ulbricht is being accused of having created the Silk Road website and facilitating the drug purchases and sales on that site. Silk Road is a website accessible through the Onion router, also known as the darknet, the dark web, deep web. And people could go on there and, if they play their cards right, obscure their identity and acquire drugs. But as we've learned in the case, the federal government, United States of America Incorporated, was on Ross's tail and also following many of the vendors and users. Many people were arrested. Investigations took place from the IRS, Department of Homeland Security Investigations, the FBI. And they arrested people, they leveraged people to testify, they worked their way all the way up the ladder and finally got to Ross William Ulbricht. So on today's podcast, I'm going to recap Week 3. Last week, I broke down Week 2 for you, all sorts of big revelations. Week 3 was more of the same. The prosecution is building their case, and it's looking pretty strong, unfortunately for Ross, unfortunately for those who believe in the philosophy of no victim, no crime, for Ross's family, but also for anybody that's into internet freedom. This case will set precedent that will allow governments to prosecute people for the actions of users of their website. So if you run a website, if you're a web administrator or a host, this will affect you. I want to thank some sponsors real quick. Our premier sponsor on the program is Green Revolution Cooling. Check them out at grcooling.com/Bitcoin. They do submersion mining, which is a wonderful new technology where you can have more effective, more efficient Bitcoin mining. Prices are going down, difficulties going up. In order to remain competitive, you got to check out this new innovative technology. So coming up this month, I'm hoping we're going to tour their facility in Austin, Texas to check out their submersion mining and all of their fancy equipment and learn more about them. We'll talk with some of the people involved and learn more about that exciting technology. Check them out again at grcooling.com/Bitcoin. And I also want to thank a couple sponsors that sponsored us specifically for our Silk Road coverage. That's the Free State Project, freestateproject.org. It's an effort to get 20,000 like-minded liberty activists to move to the small state of New Hampshire and participate in the creation of a free society. There's already over 1,500 activists that have moved, and there's over a dozen of them that have taken up seats in the State House. They're making a difference. They're making it even more of a free state. It's one of the freest states in the Union. A lot of cool people, a lot of cool community being created, and a lot of Bitcoin. It's one of the Bitcoin hubs in North America, maybe even in the world. Every year they do Liberty Forum. There's Bitcoin people all over. So check them out at again, freestateproject.org. And the other sponsor is my good friend Justice Ranvier out of Austin, Texas. He does bitcoinism.liberty.me. It's a blog with his writings, philosophy, economics, all sorts of good stuff, all about Bitcoin. Some pretty good anti-establishment stuff, too, going against the grain, going against the Bitcoin status quo, the Bitcoin elites. So appreciate that work that he's doing there. Check it out at bitcoinism.liberty.me. Okay, folks, I'm going to go ahead and go on with the Week 3 recap, and then after the recap, I'm going to break down some of my analysis and insights, and then pretty soon the jury will be deliberating, probably tomorrow after this is posted, and I'll be giving you some post thoughts, maybe do some interviews, and keep the story going. Okay, so here's the Week 3 recap, the Silk Road trial. The snow blew cold outside the Daniel Patrick Moynihan United States Courthouse last week as a 12-person jury heard more of the government's case in the trial against Ross William Ulbricht. Ulbricht is being prosecuted for creating the Silk Road marketplace and allegedly facilitating the purchase and sale of illicit goods and drugs. In Week 3 of the trial, the jury learned how a Google search led the IRS to Ross Ulbricht, and how activities referenced in Ulbricht's personal emails were also found in private chats between Silk Road's main administrator, Dread Pirate Roberts, and his associates. Also in Week 3, the government called to the stand a former heroin dealer who testified that he sold drugs online on Silk Road in order to feed his growing addiction. On the final day of Week 3, an FBI contractor shared with the court his Bitcoin transaction analysis, which tied close to 4,000 Bitcoin transactions emanating from Silk Road servers to wallets found on Ross Ulbricht's personal laptop. In an effort to bring an impactful finish to a thorough and hard-hitting week of testimony, the prosecution finished off their arguments Thursday afternoon by finally bringing up the murder-for-hire plot Dread Pirate Roberts was allegedly involved in. All in all, it was another difficult week for the Ulbricht defense team. The Google search that led authorities to Ross William Ulbricht. After Monday's proceedings were canceled due to extreme winter weather, Week 3 began with the testimony of IRS Special Agent Gary Alford. Working with the New York Organized Crime Drug Strike Task Force, Alford was in charge of an investigation aimed at finding the identity behind Dread Pirate Roberts. Special Agent shared a step-by-step account of how his online searches led him to Ross Ulbricht. He started with a simple Google search limited to the results that were on or before January 31, 2011. Silk Road was known to have been started sometime in February 2011. He searched for the terms Silk Road and .onion. This search pointed him to a Bitcoin Talk forum post about a hypothetical drug market that used Bitcoins. The post was titled Heroin Store. On this post was a quote from a user named Altoid asking other users if they had heard of the Silk Road Marketplace on Tor and asking them to visit silkroad420.wordpress.com to learn how to access the site. Alfred also found another similar post advertising silkroad420.wordpress.com from someone using the same username Altoid, this time on an online forum dedicated to psychedelic mushrooms. Special Agent went on to search the Bitcoin Talk forum for previous posts from the username Altoid. From here, Alfred found a post by Altoid advertising a tech position with the Bitcoin startup. The post encouraged applicants to email rossulbricht@gmail.com. Ulbricht's emails match up with Dread Pirate Roberts' private chats. Now that the feds had pinned Ross Ulbricht as their primary suspect, Special Agent Alford obtains a search warrant compelling Google to share Ulbricht's personal emails with the government. With access to Ulbricht's email, the prosecution was able to connect activities referenced in DPR's private chats to statements made by Ulbricht through his email or social media accounts. Talk of travel plans were included in the government's examples of similarities between DPR chats and Ulbricht's communications. The government showed screenshots of DPR talking about traveling alongside screenshots from cheapair.com showing a flight Ulbricht had booked during the same time period. Also referenced was a Facebook photo album with pictures of Ulbricht in Thailand, while at the same time DPR talked about running around, quote, beaches and jungles with some girls. Perhaps the most compelling evidence was a private chat with DPR and an associate talking about the need to work with the statistician to measure the efficacy of their Bitcoin tumbling system. Bitcoin tumbling is a process of combining transactions randomly with other transactions, sending them to dummy transactions and addresses so as to disguise the genesis of the transaction. In the message, DPR says he knows someone and will reach out to them. Shortly after, he replies to the same Tor chat, the private chat, quoting a statistician friend of his. The government then presented, in the form of email screenshots, evidence showing that the quoted conversation from the statistician actually took place within Ross Ulbricht's email. The jury hears from a heroin addict turned high-volume Silk Road vendor. On Wednesday, the government called Michael Dutch to the stand. Dutch, who was dressed in full prison garb, was a Silk Road heroin vendor who, according to his testimony, became an online vendor to help feed his growing heroin addiction. Dutch recounted his history as an addict and shared with the court that at one point he was injecting 60 to 100 bags of heroin a day. He told the jury that at the height of his online trade, he was bringing in $60,000 to $70,000 a month in drug sales. The witness also shared many stories of his customers who were anxiously trying to get more heroin before they went through more withdrawals. One customer message shared wrote, "I just want to check on the shipment because I'm extremely dope sick and need something right now." Another user wrote, "I'm throwing up, the worst of the worst withdrawal symptoms, and plus I have life-destroying pain." When prosecutors asked Dutch how he felt about contributing to the addiction of his customers, he said it was something that bothered him on a daily basis. Searching servers and seizing Bitcoin. On the final day of Week 3 proceedings, the jury heard from former FBI agent Liawen Yum, who shared with the court the results of a Bitcoin transaction analysis he conducted on Bitcoin wallets found on Silk Road servers and Ulbricht's seized laptop. Yum, who played a major role in the seizure of Silk Road servers, found a total of 2,105,127 Bitcoin addresses on Silk Road servers and 11,135 on Ulbricht's laptop. He then conducted an analysis on transactions sent from Silk Road wallets to Bitcoin addresses on Ulbricht's computer. Yum found that there were just under 4,000 transactions originating with Silk Road wallets and sent to wallets found on Ulbricht's laptop. The transactions totaled 700,254 Bitcoins, or around 13,359,000 when averaging Bitcoin price over the duration of the Bitcoin transfers. The murder-for-hire plot rears its ugly head. Before proceedings ended on Thursday, the government began telling the story of Dread Pirate Roberts' alleged murder-for-hire plot. Prosecution shared a string of messages between DPR and the apparent hitman that began following DPR's receipt of threats to reveal thousands of Silk Road user identities. In response to receiving the threats, DPR reached out to the supplier who was said to have been owed the $500,000 bounty from the original threat. The supplier, who used username Red and White, was then hired to kill Friendly Chemist before he revealed any information that could damage Silk Road. The jury heard a message from Dread Pirate Roberts to Red and White that read, "In my eyes, Friendly Chemist is a liability, and I wouldn't mind if he was executed." While Ulbricht is not being charged for the alleged murder-for-hire plot in New York Federal District Court, a ruling from the court before the trial started stating that the prosecution would be able to enter the information in as evidence. As the story was told, many in the jury became visibly distraught over what they had heard. While they won't be deciding on the murder-for-hire in particular, it will likely weigh heavily as they decide Ulbricht's fate. Heading into the final week. Week 4 was yet again full of very strong evidence linking Ross Ulbricht to Silk Road's administrator, Dread Pirate Roberts. With evidence tying DPR chats to Ulbricht's email and the Bitcoin analysis showing thousands of transactions from Silk Road wallets to Bitcoin addresses Ulbricht controlled, as Week 5 begins, the defense team will certainly have their work cut out for them. The government will rest their case on Monday, and the defense's arguments are expected to wrap up by midweek. We'll very likely hear a verdict in this case before Friday next week. Stay tuned. All right, there you have it, folks. That's a Week 3 recap. And I had already previously written that for a TechCrunch article. So for an update, the trial is going, the prosecution already rested their case. So has the defense. Tomorrow, the jury will deliberate on whether or not to find Ross William Ulbricht guilty or not guilty. So that is Wednesday. That's coming right up. Let me get the date just so you have some perspective. Wednesday, February 4th, the jury will deliberate, and we should have a final verdict on whether or not he's found guilty or not guilty. So the evidence is pretty damning and pretty strong. It seems clear based on the emails tying Ross to the DPR chats that Ross may have in fact been DPR throughout the entire duration of the Silk Road website. It was entered in the evidence by the defense that Inigo, one of the Silk Road administrators, had said that at one point he believed there were 2 or 3 DPRs, but nothing was brought up substantially to show that there was. And all the stuff that was brought up about Mark Karpellas, the disgraced former CEO of Mt. Gox, was required to be stricken from the record based on a judge's ruling. So a lot of people are saying, man, why did Ross tie all that stuff to his email? I think it was just early on. Perhaps he didn't expect it to get so big and so large and powerful. Also, people are saying they can't believe that he had all those chats stored on there and all the same Bitcoin addresses that were used connected to Silk Road. I think that he perhaps put a little bit too much faith in the fact that his laptop was probably encrypted whenever it was shut. So I guess he thought that he would be scot-free as long as that laptop got shut. No one would be able to look into it. Well, of course, as we heard in Week 1 about the arrest of Ulbricht, the FBI was ordered to grab the laptop first and make sure it stays open before he could close it. So everything seems to be stacked up against Ulbricht. We will hear the verdict again on Wednesday. I'll try to get a report for you guys as soon as possible on that front, and we'll continue our analysis of this case and what it means. And I just want to, let it be known from my perspective that I stand in solidarity with Ross Ulbricht, with Dread Pirate Roberts, with Silk Road, with online black and gray markets. No victim, no crime. Well, people bring up the murder for hire thing. And of course, nobody was actually murdered. There's no evidence of anybody actually being killed. Canadian authorities never produced any bodies or anything at any of the addresses that were discussed, and it's even possible that the person that was trying to do the hit may have been scamming Ross, or in fact it could have been the government. So I don't know. That's something that there needs to be discussion about murder for hire in a free society. What if there's a role for that? If not, I don't know. It seems like he might have been trying to protect his enterprise. I don't know what's going on with that. Another thing is, who knows how much of this is fabricated by the government? You're supposed to take the government's word because they swear an oath upon the Bible. Well, the government lies all the time, and if they're trying to shut someone away, you can't put anything past them. So that's a whole problem and a struggle that I had in observing this trial. How are we to know what truth truly is? How can we reach some sort of objective truth, or at least a truth that everybody, all parties, agree upon? And it's going to have to be more than just words on a paper or a government agent who puts his hand on a Bible for me to be convinced. That being said, if the murder for hire stuff is legit, opens up a whole nother can of worms, and Ross Ulbricht will be facing the murder for hire charges in a Maryland district court coming up soon. So nonetheless, I still stand in solidarity with Ross, with DPR, and we're going to continue to cover this story and continue to encourage people to use encryption technology, to get involved with the Onion router, to trade in Bitcoin, to opt out of government-controlled and monopoly centralized institutions. And in fact, this case has inspired me to take a path down encryption and all that technology on my own. I try to do it to the best of my ability, but I'm still far behind. So I'll probably be using this podcast as a wonderful tool to educate you listeners and supporters to go ahead and get encrypted along with me and become more dark, so to speak. I'll do some educational tutorials. We'll have some more experts on to step us through setting up private encrypted chats on your smartphones and stuff like Red Phone on your smartphone, and how to use PGP and all that good stuff. So I also want to remind you folks, we still have our Indiegogo campaign going on. At the time of this recording, there's like 30 hours left. So we came up short of our goal, but we still have some real-world costs that are in there that we need to come up with. We need to get a plane ticket to bring Derek Bros back home, and there's still some writers that need to get paid for some of the coverage, and we'd like to continue analysis and coverage after the trial's over. So if you haven't yet, check out our Indiegogo campaign. You can access it by going to thelibertybeat.com and clicking on the banner in the top right of the page. thelibertybeat.com, clicking on the banner. And also, if anybody's interested in buying LTB coin, I'd like to sell some of my personal LTB coin in order to help fund this trip and this trial. So message me or comment down in the comments with an offer that you have. I'm not sure what the market price is, but I'll entertain any offers on selling LTB coin. I have a decent amount to part with, so if you're interested in purchasing, let me know. All right, this is SovereignBTC signing out. Peace, love, freedom, Bitcoin, solidarity with Ross Ulbricht. I'm out.